Coming up on Bridge City News, WestJet announces major layoffs for the airline, which will affect thousands of employees. Young people in our city gathered at the Lethbridge police station earlier today to say thank you to those who serve and protect. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau explains why his government will not negotiate a prisoner exchange for the two Michaels being held captive in China.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Lethbridge Police Commission has dismissed the last remaining complaint filed against interim police chief Scott Woods. The commission was investigating complaints of bullying and harassment filed by Sergeant Jason Moulton. That's a story we first brought you here on Bridge City News. The complaint was investigated by two external agencies, ACERT and the Chief of Police of the Tsuut'ina Nation Police Service. Now, over the course of the investigation, the following language was used to describe the allegations against Woods, including sheer fiction and no evidence. In a statement released today, interim police chief Scott Woods had this to say: "Hopefully, with the dismissal of this complaint, the Lethbridge Police Service will be allowed to move forward in our efforts to cultivate a bias-free policing in our community without the distraction of groundless complaints against its leadership. This commitment is important not only to hold accountable the few officers who may fail, but also to uphold the honor and integrity of the vast majority of officers who want to serve the community with diligence, respect, and fairness. It will be my pledge and privilege to support those officers in providing the policing that all of Lethbridge deserves." You know, a hard line of work it is to be a police officer. The recent events, including the death of George Floyd and the accompanying protests, have only made it that much harder. Video journalist Naveen Day was on scene at the Lethbridge police station earlier today and captured credit where credit was due.
A group of citizens, mostly small children, came to the Lethbridge police station this morning with cards and banners to show their support for the police. Kate Rigo, a criminal justice instructor and 20-year veteran of the RCMP, says that police work is hard and often underappreciated.
These police officers in southern Alberta are amazing people. They work hard, they've committed to making our communities safe, and they need to hear from us that we believe in what they're doing. The statistics tell us that the vast majority of encounters that they are going to have are successfully resolved without any type of violence.
Among the crowd were those who have had brushes with the law, and they came out to show support for the police and the impact officers have had on their lives.
Throughout the years, I've honestly had a lot of legal troubles. And one officer I know specifically, Officer Thibault, is the one who's always gotten me through my school troubles, my legal troubles. Helped me a little bit financially, honestly. Like, he really helped me with a lot of stress. And I know that household-wise, he has helped my family like more than anyone in my entire life. So, I mean, why not come out and give a little respect and honesty to someone who's actually cherished you more than they've cherished anyone else, right?
Interim Police Chief Scott Woods responded to the gesture, saying that criticism always comes with the job of policing. He asked that the LPS staff know they have a high level of support in the community. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Videos have been surfacing on social media depicting police brutality and assaults by police officers, especially south of the border. At last night's meeting of the Police Commission, interim Lethbridge Police Chief Scott Woods said they're looking at ways to change how they do takedowns.
One of the other things we're looking at is use of force options, and I think if you look at some of the stuff that tends to come up into the media that gets shown on TV, it always involves the officers with somebody on the ground. So we are exploring some other techniques that we can use in order to get control of people. Obviously, taking somebody, things can become dynamic very quickly in our business, and sometimes it's inevitable that that's where we end up, but we're certainly exploring some of those options in order to look at alternatives to lessen those instances.
A man from Vulcan, Alberta is facing a long list of charges following a pair of police pursuits, which also led to some vehicles being hit across southern Alberta. Last Sunday, Claresholm RCMP saw a driver who was asleep behind the wheel of a one-ton truck. When he awoke, he slammed into two police vehicles, disabling one. Police did not pursue because the situation was too dangerous for the public. Now, a couple of days later, the same truck, which was suspected as being stolen, was located in Nanton. When police pursued the driver, he took off again, smashing into another police cruiser. The pursuit ended when the driver of the truck slammed into yet another vehicle. 25-year-old Hudson Soul faces 31 charges, including 2 counts of assault on police, stolen property, and firearms offenses. Over the last couple of weeks, police officers from all over the world have been demonized by the public. Much of this comes from the certain acts of brutality which have taken place. There's also a lot of good police that are doing wonderful things in our community as well. Now, the chair of School of Justice Studies at Lethbridge College spoke about what he sees from young people hoping to enter into the law enforcement field.
They want to help people. They want to make a difference. They want to make the community better. We're actually trying to make them better citizens. We're giving them a very broad education. We want, at one point in time, hard skills was important. How to arrest somebody, how to physically deal with somebody. Those hard skills aren't what's important anymore. What's really, truly important is communication skills. We teach them how to talk. We teach them how to listen. We teach them about themselves, their own mental health, other people's mental health, self-care. Utilizing communication skills, written communication skills and verbal communication skills, how to be part of the community.
Lethbridge College has graduated 130 students from the criminal justice program this year. Former Lethbridge Hurricanes players have responded to allegations of abuse in a lawsuit against the Canadian Hockey League. The class action lawsuit filed June 18th against the CHL includes former Cane Garrett Taylor and former NHLer Daniel Cirillo. The statement of claim is on behalf of children aged 15 to 17 who were sexually and physically assaulted, hazed, and abused while playing away for CHL teams in 2008 and 2009. The lawsuit is seeking damages for negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, breach of contract, and a declaration that the teams and leagues were liable for abuse perpetrated by their employers and players. Soccer jerseys from Lethbridge College have made their way to Ghana, Africa. Nursing student Jill Brown personally delivered 2 Kodiak soccer kits to a training school in Ghana earlier this year. The jerseys were worn from 2013 to 2016 before being retired by the club after the Kodiaks changed colors from green to light blue. Canada Day festivities typically take months for the city to plan for, but this year preparation looked a little bit different. Lethbridge is still encouraging us to celebrate, but instead in the comfort of our own backyard.
Everybody has a big, beautiful backyard, whether it's in a park, whether it's in your own home. Go out and celebrate with your family and friends in your small group in a safe way. We have provided some activities for you guys to do. We have our Canada Day Celebrate in Your Backyard booklet. It has lots of fun activities and recipes and games, and you name it, you can probably find an activity for all ages in here. Celebrating things is what gets us through everything. Family, friends, community, socialization. That's what helps us to get through everything. It keeps our emotional stability, it keeps our well-being, makes us happy. Happiness is what keeps us, together.
You can call 311 and request a gift bag put together by the city. There appears to be a lot of pressure on young girls today to have outward beauty, but what about on the inside? Renee Peterson is a registered nurse and founder of Beautiful Inside Academy. She has some advice on how moms can best support their daughters.
So the question I often put forth to my moms is, who do you need to be so she can be who she needs to be? My coaching with the moms is like, where are those areas where you still feel that you need to up level, or those areas that you see in your daughter that she's struggling, does she mirror that from you as well? And so it's not about shaming or blaming, it's just about this exciting exploration of how can we heal that within us as moms so that automatically can give our daughters a different launching pad from.
Catch the full interview with Renee Peterson discussing the importance of supporting our daughters. That is coming up in the second half of our show. The Kainai Wellness Center and Standoff ushered in a convoy of vehicles to pray for the community, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. As Micah Quinn explains now, this prayer is to encourage community members who've been impacted by COVID-19 or the direct impact of opioids on the people of the Blood Tribe.
Truckloads of members from the Kainai Wellness Center made their way to the communities of Moses Lake, Laverne, Old Agency, and then back to the Kainai Wellness Center today for their day of prayer.
Well, it's just a day of prayer, celebration, song. Song is celebration, song is believing, sound is, I would say sharing a common belief, common ground will help you, to knowing that we're here, we care. And that's what we're announcing to the people, we haven't forgotten about you. We're here, we have our banners, we have our ceremonies, and that is still really, really strong within our community.
Keith Chief Moon is an elder of the Kainai Wellness Center, and he says this day of prayer is a reminder to not forget who they are as a people, and as a community of the Blood Tribe.
So that's what's really important, that we make the connection. We remember who we are, and to stay away from the alcohol and drugs. So that's to remember, because they were never part of our way of life. They never were, and they never will.
This day of prayer is also a reminder to get back to basics.
To remember about our prayers, the spirituality, and keep everybody out, people that are in that world of doing spirituality. So it's a reminder that, again, it happens every 100 years. So it is a realization for us to remember who we are.
The Kainai Wellness Center is offering counseling to the community and letting them know they are here to help, especially in the case of the opioid crisis on the Blood Reserve. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
A prominent Alberta First Nations chief who was the subject of a violent arrest says he's overwhelmed after the charges against him were dropped. Chief Alan Adam of the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation says he and his wife did nothing wrong to be charged with resisting arrest and assaulting a police officer.
Of the fact that the charges have been drawn, because, my wife and I knew that we didn't do nothing wrong. It was just for an expired license plate. A lot of changes coming to the RCMP and how they conduct their policing, and not only the RCMP, but police forces all across Canada, how to change their behaviors. I leave that up to their peers and their superintendents to deal with them the way they want to be dealt with. And if they think it's okay, well then make the proper changes necessary to hold them accountable.
The UCP government says it is seriously considering creating an Alberta pension plan and our own provincial police force, as was discussed recently with the Fair Deal panel. Our legislative reporter Tyler Dawson says creating a provincial police force would have some direct advantages.
The logic is that there would be some more sort of local control in terms of priorities and policy direction, instead of having to sort of go through the, let's say, Ottawa bureaucracy to get change in the RCMP. I've been thinking about this week, and a pretty good example of that would be in the floods in High Level when the RCMP seized a bunch of firearms. In theory, perhaps an Alberta provincial police force wouldn't have done that.
Catch the full interview with Tyler Dawson. We'll also discuss how one Southern Alberta MLA is open to the idea of Alberta separation. That is coming up after Business News. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected many industries, including sports franchises here in Canada. The Saskatchewan Roughriders today say the organization has lost about $200,000 this fiscal year. The team says the coronavirus impacted the club's revenue, but officials say their projections for a shortened or non-existent 2020 season are bleak because close to half of the team's revenue comes from gate receipts. CEO Craig Reynolds says this is the biggest financial hit the Riders have faced in 110 years. Despite pressure to halt extradition proceedings against Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says it is business as usual. Trudeau says a prisoner exchange involving the two Canadians being held captive in China is out of the question.
I respect the distinguished Canadians who put forward that letter, but I deeply disagree with them. The idea of solving a short-term situation by creating a precedent that demonstrates to China that all they or another country has to do is randomly arrest a handful of Canadians to put political pressure on a government to do what we want, even by going against the independence of our justice system, would endanger the millions of Canadians who live and travel overseas every single year.
The Alberta government says it will begin offering asymptomatic COVID-19 testing at pharmacies. The province says this will make it easier for Albertans to get tested to help prevent the spread of the virus. Our province remains among the world leaders in COVID-19 testing per capita. More than 415,000 tests have already been completed across the province. Most of the 20 community-based pharmacies are located in Edmonton and Calgary. The test is a simple throat swab, which is then sent to Alberta Precision Labs for analysis. Our province recorded 44 new cases of COVID-19 today, and fortunately, no new deaths. The province now has 538 active cases. So far, 7,134 Albertans have recovered from the virus, while 153 people have died. Here in the South Zone, there are just 23 active cases. BC Premier John Horgan says because his province is ahead of flattening the COVID-19 curve, they're easing more health restrictions. Horgan says the expansion includes the reopening for hotels, motels, spas, and even overnight camping in provincial parks.
Under the guidance of the public health officer, we are now able to move slowly into phase 3 of our 4-phase plan. This means more businesses listed under phase 3 of our restart plan will have the guidance of public health and WorkSafe to open safely. It's the work of the Public Health Office and WorkSafe BC that has allowed us to develop the guidelines we'll all need to have a safe reopening of things like hotels, resorts, parks, the film industry, and some entertainment venues like movie theaters.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he does not want to see the United States border reopened after July 21st, considering the resurgence of COVID-19 cases in many states. Ottawa's already extended a ban on non-essential travel between the countries till at least July 21st, but Ford says that seems a little early.
I talked to an expert in this, and his conversation kind of went like this. You're doing so well in Ontario and Canada, and looking at the numbers come down. And I said, well, what do you think about the second wave? He says, do you know when the second wave is going to happen? He says, when you fully open up and you let people from around the world come back into Canada. I know it's inevitable, we got to do it. I just don't think we're ready right now.
The 4 Atlantic provinces announced plans to ease interprovincial travel restrictions, creating a so-called bubble. Nova Scotia Premier Stephen McNeil said as of July 3rd, residents will be allowed to travel within the region without having to self-isolate for 2 weeks when arriving from another province.
As many of you know, we have gradually worked at easing restrictions in Nova Scotia. Last week, we talked about expanding the family bubble to groups of 10 and larger outside gatherings to 50. The next natural phase to that was to eliminate the barriers inside of Atlantic Canada. Pleased premiers were all able to come together with our respective governments and public health officials to open up that as of July 3rd. You'll be able to move in and around Atlantic Canada without the self-isolation of 14 days. That will, though, remain in effect for the rest of Canada, or anyone outside of Atlantic Canada who decides they're coming into Nova Scotia or the rest of the region. They will have to still self-isolate for that 14 days.
Here is a surprising story. A report from a new government watchdog says more than 1 million coronavirus relief payments totaling $1.4 billion went to dead people in the United States. Yeah, that's right, dead people.
It's inevitable in any large government program done very quickly with no precedent that there will be a lot of mistakes. And there were a lot of mistakes. When I heard the $1.4 billion, I was thinking, is that all? You know, when you talk about out of $1 trillion, that's really a tiny drop in the bucket compared with the total size of the stimulus payments. And I'm sure that as we dig deeper, we'll find other payments that went to where they shouldn't have gone. We'll find, again, some people are double dipping on unemployment checks and PPP loans. We'll find plenty of stuff if you look hard enough. But the amazing thing is they responded with amazing speed, got it out very fast, and yes, they got checks out to dead people. At the end of the day, they don't have a profit and loss statement for each division.
Living in southern Alberta, we come across wildlife all of the time, especially in the city. Now check out this video submitted by one of our viewers, Myrna. A sweet little deer came right up to her. She was relaxing on her front porch on Corvid Crescent.
I think he wants to drink from the fountain. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, it's a pretty deer. Yes. That's a pretty deer. Oh, yes, you're pretty. Oh, you're so friendly. Oh, you're so friendly.
That is so adorable. A visit from Bambi will make anyone's day. We had quite the light show last night, didn't we? Lots of lightning over the city and quite a bit of rain. Cooler temperatures and more moisture is on the way. Full weather details are coming up. Wasn't that the light show last night? That was incredible. All of the lightning, we had a little bit of rain. Many of the rain clouds cleared out earlier today, making way for lots of sunshine. Tonight, just a few clouds developing with a low near 14. Tomorrow, mainly sunny with a balmy high of 31. A low-pressure system returns on Saturday, bringing more rain and a high of only 22. Sunday, more showers developing, with the mercury dropping to 14. Showers again on Monday with a high of 16. Tuesday, a good chance of rain again and a high expected near 20. For Canada Day Wednesday, a mixture of sun and cloud and a high of 22. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 23 and an average low of 10. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 1988 at 33 degrees, and the record low was 3 in 1951. Sunrise was at 5:25, sunset at 9:43. Let's see how tomorrow's shaping up across the country now. Expect lots of sunshine at 23 for Victoria, BC. A good chance of showers at 21 for Vancouver. A 30% chance of thunder showers in Calgary on Friday and a high of 23. Mainly cloudy and 22 degrees for Edmonton. Just a few clouds and 29 is on tap for Regina tomorrow. Partly cloudy and 27 for Saskatoon. Lots of sunshine and 28 is in the forecast for Winnipeg. Mainly cloudy and 29 for both Toronto and Ottawa. Light showers and 26 degrees in Montreal tomorrow. In Atlantic Canada, expect showers and 27 for Fredericton. Showers and 25 for Halifax. Cloudy and 26 for Charlottetown. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect periods of drizzle and a high near 23 for tomorrow. WestJet Airlines says it will be permanently laying off just over 3,300 employees. The company says it is part of a major restructuring amid the COVID-19 pandemic that has devastated the travel industry. The company says it will consolidate call center activity in Alberta, restructure its office, and contract out operations at all but 4 of the 38 Canadian airports where it operates. A union representing employees says around 2,300 airport customer service agents and baggage handlers will be among those losing their jobs. Macy's says it will be laying off 3,900 corporate staffers as the COVID-19 pandemic takes its toll on that company. The reduction will save the department store around $630 million per year. Like many of its non-essential peers, Macy's was forced to close its stores in mid-March to curb the spread of the coronavirus and saw sales evaporate. Company officials say customers are slowly coming back since stores reopened last month, but Macy's needs to cut costs to readjust to the new business climate. Disney says it is postponing the mid-July reopening of its Southern California theme parks until it receives guidelines from the state. The entertainment giant, which closed on March 14th, had hoped to reopen its theme park on July 17th after a 4-month closure due to the coronavirus. The state has indicated it will not reissue guidelines until after July 4th. Disney had said it had no choice to delay until it receives approval from government officials. Waterloo, Ontario-based BlackBerry posted a $636 million net loss in the first quarter ending May 31st. The company, which reports in U.S. currency, said the loss amounted to $1.14 per share. Revenue was $206 million down from $247 million in the first quarter of the fiscal 2020. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 151 points to 15,446. The Dow was up 299 points to 25,745. The S&P 500 was up 33 to 3,083, and the Nasdaq was up 107 to finish the day at 10,017. Oil was up $1.03 to $39.04 per barrel. Natural gas was down 16 cents to $1.44. Gold was down 3 cents to $17.6376 an ounce, and silver was up 2 cents to $17.83 an ounce. Wheat is at $245 per metric ton, barley's at $248, canola's at $473, and corn is at $231 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 88 cents to $94.38, feeder cattle were up 38 cents to $134.40, and lean hogs were up $1 to $47.15. The Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to 73.30 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the Lethbridge Police Commission has dismissed the last remaining complaint filed against Lethbridge Interim Police Chief Scott Woods. The commission was investigating complaints of bullying and harassment filed by Sergeant Jason Moulton. A story we first brought you here on Bridge City News. The complaint was investigated by 2 external agencies, including ACERT and the Chief of Police at the Tsuut'ina Nation Police Service. Cypress Hills Medicine Hat UCP MLA Drew Barnes says Albertans may have a case for independence. Our legislative reporter Tyler Dawson has details coming up next. The Alberta Union of Provincial Employees is launching a court challenge of the province's Bill 1. Now, this is the bill that prevents protesting and interfering with the operation of highways, pipelines, and other infrastructure. Many Albertans are celebrating this new legislation, but the unions, not so much. To talk more about it is our legislative reporter Tyler Dawson, who's also the Alberta correspondent with the National Post, joining me from Edmonton. Tyler, the union says this bill will interfere with their bargaining rights when protesting or demonstrating. How so?
Yeah, that's right. So they basically say that the bill is written in a way that could encompass, legitimate protest, political protest, strike action, things like that. Because as we know, that this bill was proposed back during the protests that saw railway blockades, in sort of solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en people in British Columbia over the Coastal GasLink pipeline. So this bill was targeted in a certain way at a certain form of protest, but it could, I suppose, in theory, if you were, on strike action or something and barring access to a site or something like that, where there was a picket line, that could, in theory, I suppose, be caught by this. Now, the UCP staff and stuff on Twitter saying, well, we had no idea they were planning on barricading railways and this and that, and they really should tell people if that's what they want to do. But at any rate, it will be a court challenge. Documents were filed this week to challenge that. So, one of those things, another thing in front of the courts for the government. So we'll have to see what the courts say on it.
Environmental monitoring is back, Tyler. The province had suspended inspections during the coronavirus pandemic, citing worker safety. Now, those inspections will resume on July 15th. What does this really mean for Alberta businesses?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it means a whole lot. The government was sort of saying that prior to the decision being made to suspend these inspections, there were sort of standards agreed upon, and industry was in on this, and everyone sort of agreed on how to proceed and how to maintain the necessary standards. So I suppose what it could mean are some procedural changes in terms of people coming back onto sites and checking these things. But it's certainly being greeted by environmental advocates in particular for being an overdue decision. And this was heavily criticized at the time by government, by opponents of government, I should say, the opposition, saying that this is the sort of thing that leads to catastrophe. The industry cannot be allowed to run without oversight and things like that. So it's maybe another example of the slow return to normal that we're on right now.
Bill 26, otherwise known as the Referendum Bill, was introduced this week at the legislature. It allows for referenda on issues of public interest. It also sets spending limits during the referendum period of about $500,000. Now, that's more than triple what was spent during the last provincial election, was it not?
Yeah, so it's triple what a individual third-party advertiser can sell. So what the NDP said in response to all this was that this is allowing big money to come back into politics, or maybe come into politics in the first place. So the idea would be, if there was a referendum, let's say on the Canada Pension Plan becoming the Alberta Pension Plan, you could have third-party advertisers who could register to spend up to that limit to advocate for their side of things. So the reason this all came about is because the government has been sort of bouncing around this idea of a referendum on equalization. The government has been bouncing around the idea of referendums on other things, referenda, I should say. I guess that's the grammatically correct term. Referendums on things like police. So these ideas have been bouncing around for a while. What this seems to sort of do is take referenda as a tool for constitutional questions, which is what it is now, and instead make it, a possible tool for more broad sort of consultation. Not consultation is not the right word. More broad decision making for Albertans on policy. So that's sort of a big change. Now the question, of course, is what issues will it be used on? How often will it be used? Are these going to be binding? Or does there have to be clear majorities? All these issues that we see in referenda across the country, those sort of still remain in place. But the NDP is sort of crying a lot of foul this week over the introduction of that bill, which they say gives too much power to the government, too much power to the Premier's office.
I'm glad you brought that up, Tyler. I was actually watching some video of Premier Kenney and Rachel Notley going at it at the legislature, and man, it got very heated.
It has been heated lately. There's been a couple missteps on the government's part that have been heated. There was a big uproar earlier this week about a motion that was introduced saying that there should be sort of civilian police assistance or some sort of civilian corps to help with policing. And, people sort of woke up one morning and looked at Twitter, and people were like, the government wants a militia. And the odd thing is that there was this big flare-up over it, and then but when you went back and looked at the debates, those debates were actually relatively civil. So but there have been some hot moments this week in Alberta politics, and maybe the hot weather up here is getting to everybody. I don't know.
You know, it's interesting too, when I used to cover politics and federal on Parliament Hill there, the federal politics, and you could always just talk to the Speaker of the House. You can't talk to the opposition leader. You can't talk to the other MP. You know, same thing in the MLAs can't talk to each other, or the leaders can't. So they're yelling. The poor Speaker of the House, he must go home just shaking, after being yelled at all day long like that. Now let's talk about the Fair Deal panel, which came out last week, Tyler, and made many recommendations, including Albertans who have their own pension plan, their own police force. There was also a lot of talk regarding the equalization formula. Tell me more about those.
Yeah, that's right. Big list of things. So this came up, must have been last year at this point, the Premier saying that, in light of the sort of feelings that Albertans had about being treated poorly within Confederation, they would create this panel that consulted with Albertans on what could be done to improve the province's relationship with Confederation. Now, I think as we've talked about a few times before, a lot of these ideas weren't especially new. They were, in fact, studied by the Ralph Klein government. They had been advocated for by Stephen Harper back before he was Prime Minister. So this panel came out with a number of different recommendations compared to what, interestingly, the panel in the Klein years found. So they did recommend the creation of a provincial police force, for example. They did recommend the creation of an Alberta pension plan. They did recommend, I'm blanking on what the other, there's such a big list, all kinds of things. But the ones that have got the attention this week are basically the police and the pension and the equalization, fiscal stabilization. They want to basically retroactively apply a formula so that Alberta could get some money going back to, I think, 2016 is when they would they want the government to be reimbursed, basically. So what that's going to look like is likely a referendum on equalization, I believe in 2021, to coincide, I think, with the municipal elections. It will be a ballot issue there. And the provincial police and the pension plan are the other two. Now, the pension plan has got attention this week because the NDP says that if Alberta takes over the pension plan, we also take over this huge unfunded liability. And that is an issue for the pension plan. Now, the government comes back and says, well, actually, we already have that liability. It's our portion of the federal one. So there's been a little bit of back and forth on some of the, minutia maybe of what an Alberta pension plan would look like. But this has been percolating ever since the Fair Deal panel existed. There were some union ads running on talk radio stations over the past several months about this. And the police, sorry, I know I'm rambling on at you here, but there's just so much on it. And the police, that would be the end basically of RCMP contract policing in the province. So if you live outside of a major city, you probably have RCMP officers doing your policing. So Alberta actually had a provincial police force like 80 years ago, 90 years ago. So it would be a return to that. What that would look like is, how do you break those contracts? What do you do with all those officers? How do you hire new officers? And also, what's the financial situation going to look like? Because at the moment, it's a shared cost between the federal government and the province. So all kinds of issues to consider once the government decides to actually start moving forward on any one or multiple of these topics.
What did some government officials have to say are the advantages of having that provincial police force as opposed to the RCMP in some of the smaller jurisdictions like you mentioned?
So what the Justice Minister said is that there have been issues with response time, issues with staffing and things like that in rural areas, which anyone who lives outside a large center surely will have experienced. They also say there have been some issues in terms of how people understand Alberta, because as we know, the RCMP takes candidates, they go to the training depot, and then they sort of get sent off to wherever. So the logic is that there would be some more sort of local control in terms of priorities and policy direction, instead of having to sort of go through the, let's say, Ottawa bureaucracy to get change in the RCMP. I've been thinking about this week, and a pretty good example of that would be in the floods in High Level when the RCMP seized a bunch of firearms. In theory, perhaps an Alberta provincial police force wouldn't have done that. So those are the sorts of things that Schweitzer has talked about, that the government has talked about. But I'm positive should we start going down this road, we'll see another round of consultations and even more discussion on how to make it actually happen.
And you're right, I've talked to other RCMP officers who go down to Regina for a lot of the training. Then after that, they go up to northern Manitoba and other provinces around Canada, pay their dues about 4 or 5 years. So I guess if it's an Alberta provincial police force, they can focus mostly on the issues and the culture right here in our own province. Now, Tyler, even though Premier Jason Kenney said he would never consider Alberta separation, there are some in his ranks who maybe are. Drew Barnes, who is the Cypress Hills Medicinet UCP MLA, said Albertans may have a good case for an independent Alberta.
Yeah, that's right. So one of Kenny's sort of very consistent lines all through the Fair Deal panel stuff, frankly, as long as he's been back in Alberta doing Alberta politics, has been that he is a Canadian patriot, believes in Confederation. And when the independence separation question has come up, he's basically said that, look, this is a bargaining tactic that worked in Quebec because they were serious about it. If they didn't get what they wanted, they'd be out of here. But Alberta doesn't have that advantage, he says, because we don't have any intention on leaving. So why would you try and use this stick when you're not going to follow through on the threat? And what Barnes said was, well, actually, why shouldn't it be a legitimate threat? If this is a tactic that we have in our toolbox, a tool in our toolbox, then perhaps we need to be a little more serious about it. And of course, so there was the usual round of sort of hemming and hawing about what that might actually look like, because that's, one of the big sort of open questions of what independence could be. But it does show that, there are some high profile people that do hold these views. And I think one of the issues that Kenny is going to have down the road is sort of continuing to tamp down on the separatist sentiment. And so far, it seemed relatively quiet within his ranks. So this struck me as actually quite remarkable that one of his MLAs was going to come out and say that.
You know what? Here in southern Alberta, it's a lot of talk. The Wexit talk is quite strong down here. So I'm surprised that Kenny has just kind of brushed it aside or wants to quash it right away. But what are some of the big reasons why Premier Kenny is not considering Western separation?
Well, he basically says that the problems facing Alberta, even though they are perhaps problems caused by the Alberta government, like pipeline access to the coast, he basically says that separation doesn't solve those problems. So let's say Alberta separates and becomes an independent country. Well, British Columbia is still in between us and exporting oil and gas to Asia. So that's part of it. Part of it would be that you have all sorts of other expenses that all of a sudden would be needed to be handled within Alberta. And you've got military stuff, you got treaty negotiations with Indigenous people and the United States. So there's all kinds of things that have come up. But mainly for him, in my recollection of what he has talked about, it's been this issue that it doesn't actually solve very many of our problems to leave Canada, even though maybe it would be cathartic to give the country the boot, I suppose.
What's interesting too is that some government officials have talked about potentially annexing or purchasing part of northern British Columbia so you can actually get our resources to market that way, getting to tidewater, I guess, so to speak. Now, Premier Kenny tweeted an NHL promo video this week that did not show any photos from Edmonton. Tyler, I guess Oiler fans were probably not too happy about that.
Well, it actually took me back to, I have a recollection of this happening in like the Prentice years, maybe, with a Tourism Alberta sort of promotional campaign that had nothing to do with it. But yeah, so Edmonton's sort of in the running to host these NHL games, and this promotional video was, very lovely and slick, but none of the stuff in it was Edmonton. So you did have people are having fun on social media with, photos of Lake Louise and things like that saying, welcome to Edmonton and stuff, that old Cities of Champions sign sitting in strange places that everyone would have seen driving up Highway 2 back in the old days. So, it was a moment of levity maybe in what I think has been a pretty tough and, bare-knuckled sort of week in Alberta politics here.
It's funny, I saw this American promo as well about how great the United States is. Come on down, and they showed Niagara Falls, but they showed the Canadian, not the American side of Niagara Falls in their promo, right? Now, the province says its COVID mask distribution is going quite well, Tyler. I myself picked up a 4-pack at a local Tim Hortons drive-thru recently. Now, this is all part of Alberta's reopening plan. Some challenges may lay ahead, however, as some parts of the province are experiencing small spikes in COVID-19 cases.
The outlier now in terms of outbreak is actually Edmonton right now. So for a lot of this pandemic, Calgary and the sort of area around there has been the hot spot. Now Edmonton has climbed ahead of Calgary in recent days and recent weeks. So, and there's been a handful of restaurants that, jumped to reopen here when the reopening plan began, and they've now had to shut down because they've had a handful of staff members fall ill. So masks are very much a part of this relaunch strategy, the government, encouraging people to wear them. And I've been through drive-thrus. I had masks on hand, so I didn't have to get one from a drive-thru, but I have been offered them going through. And so the plan, I believe, is for there to be another round of mask distribution in July. Now, the government said back in the beginning of this that the idea was that most Albertans live within a relatively close drive to either a McDonald's, a Tim Hortons, or an A&W, I believe was the third one. So they seem to be pretty happy with it. There were some criticisms that this wasn't great for people who don't have vehicles and things like that. But, in terms of the most efficient, least sort of resource intensive way of getting these out, the government seems to be standing behind it, said it's great, going to keep going on it. And hopefully some of these little spikes we see here begin to shrink in the next days and weeks.
Our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson, joining me once again from Edmonton. Thanks so much, Tyler.
My pleasure, Hal.
Today's society puts a lot of pressure on young girls to have outward beauty. The Photoshop beauty pics on glossy magazines likely contribute to that. But what about beauty on the inside, which I feel is a lot more important? Joining me now in studio to talk about it is Renee Peterson. She's a registered nurse and the founder of the Beautiful Inside Academy. Welcome back to BCN, Renee.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Beautiful Inside Academy, what is it all about?
Well, Beautiful Inside Academy is something that I'm so deeply passionate about. I have been running this academy for 13 years, and it's a sacred place for young women to come and to have the exploration of that inner self, to develop those inner tools, inner strategies, inner mindsets to launch them to the next level of who they say they want to be. So, yeah.
Why is beauty on the inside so important?
Well, I believe that once you're connected to that place, I mean, you know as well as I do, right? You talk to someone, you see them, and then what actually comes out of them is what makes them actually truly beautiful. And so I think when they truly identify it on the inside, it just really helps them even appreciate the external even more, and just helps them connect to the beauty of their life, the beauty of who they can be, the beauty in others. So it's just fun, foundational work as far as I'm concerned.
I have a daughter who's 21 years of age. She's a beautiful young woman, inside and outside. And when she was younger, the preteen, sometimes the awkward years, she would always say, I'm not good enough, I'm not beautiful enough. And I'm encouraging her, loving her, praying for her. I'm like, yes, you are, you're beautiful. But it didn't resonate with her. No matter what her mother or I said, it was like almost strangers saying, you're beautiful. Oh, I must be beautiful. Right. But when mom and dad said it didn't really resonate with her. Why do you think that is?
Well, I know it's kind of that adolescent brain, right? Like they just thinking, you're my parents, you have to love me, you have to say that about me. And they're already in that identity kind of questioning, going, who am I worthy, am I lovable, am I enough? And so that's where I tell the parents, hey, that's okay, that's normal. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, but that's where I come in and I get to partner with you as a mom, partner with you as a dad, and support you in installing those beliefs that you so wish that your daughter would have at that time in her life. And so, yeah, it does. I actually kind of love it because it's just like I can also help make the relationship better. They're like, oh, wow, yeah, my mom says that or my dad says that. And so, okay, yeah, maybe that does have some clout. So it's really kind of magical at the same time as I do that inner work with them, help bridge and build those beautiful connections and foundations with parents as well.
So self-confidence is also very important, vital for our young people today, especially young girls. But social media can sometimes wreak havoc on a lot of young girls and their confidence.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we're in this age where everything's blowing up, and parents are parenting in an age of social media that we've never experienced before, right? So you look at TikTok, the predators, the research all around that stuff. And so along with that, yeah, I mean, we have so many filters now on social media. And so these young women are seeing these images and thinking everybody's perfect. And that's a word that I hear a lot in my academy. Well, perfect, or this is perfect, or I look over at her, right? And so it's just really helping them disconnect from some of that. And like I tell them, you run your own race. Like get like the blinders on like a horse, and what are you focused on, and who do you want to be? And when you're looking over here and comparison, because that's what that breeds, as well as also breeds like bullying. And so people just think, oh, well, I can say something behind a screen and well, whatever. And so the pain that happens, or that they've learning how to communicate, right? They're not learning this face-to-face or the power of communication. And so it's just this back and forth all on the media sites.
So how do you really explain, Renee, to a young person that what these trolls are saying on Twitter or Instagram is really irrelevant?
Yeah, well, it's...
And it's not that important.
True. And I think
it's keyboard warriors, right?
Well, yeah, right. That's very well said. And so I think what it boils down to is I really help them see, like, that through the mindset work, that they get to decide what they believe. And so I teach them to ask those pertinent questions and once again, to take their focus off of that. Like, why would you spend so many hours trolling anyways and giving your time and energy to that? And so where do you want your focus to be, and who do you want to be, and where do you want your time to be? And then they're kind of like, oh yeah, well that drains me to be doing that. And so just helping them develop those success habits and those strategies to not even be as tempted to go there.
How important is it for a young girl to have a mentor?
I think it's huge. I think it's everything. Like, I think you look at the resiliency model, and I think that our teenagers, they need a team. Like, if they need a counselor, great, let's get them in for a counselor. If they need a coach, let's get them with a coach. Like, let's buoy them up and support them in any way that they can. So they need that person that can be strong enough to also not buy into the lies that they're believing about themselves, or also buy into some of their manipulation, right? Where they're just kind of like, oh, well, that's how it is. But someone who's a strong, confident woman who can look at them and go, no, I'm going to actually challenge you on that. I'm going to stand in this space with you. I'm going to hold grace for you, and I'm going to hold you to a higher level of who I know you say you want to be. And then they're like, oh, okay.
Are there certain limits of what a mentor can and cannot do? And the reason I ask that, as a parent myself, a lot of times my kids would want to go down a certain path. I know this path will lead to destruction. Yeah. They're going to fall flat on their face because I went down a similar path when I was their age. Yeah. It's like, guys, it's not going to end well for you, right? So please don't go down the path, but you still have to let go, let God, let them do it. And sometimes they fail. It's like, oh my goodness, they're like, you know what? Dad, Mom, you were right.
Right, right.
So with a mentor, do you have to allow them to go through a similar path, similar experience?
Well, yeah, like, I mean, I can mentor them through those things, but if that's who they're saying they don't want to be, like, I don't know, it seems like I have some clout there, right? And so I'm not saying that they don't make mistakes, and sometimes failure is our greatest teacher, right? So I say to my girls, it's not about failing, but it's about never quitting. And so, like, what do you learn from those mistakes? And so, yeah, I mean, helping them understand that, hey, these will be the choices, but the choices also have consequences. You can make the choice, but you also don't get to choose the consequence. And so I think when you explain it to them in certain ways and help them see bigger picture, sometimes they do take a step back. And I mean, really, let's be honest, right? Because as parents, when we're saying don't do this, don't do that, when they're trying to assert their independence and they want to find their way, they feel like by saying, well, I'm going to do that, right? They feel like that's
sometimes in rebellion.
Perhaps, in rebellion, right? Yeah. But I think as a coach and somebody who can support a parent and saying, okay, well, I understand why your mom would say that, because let's have a look at this. This is how this could play itself out. And then, you know, get them out of that defiance, but get them more into alliance. And then they're kind of like, okay, I do want to do that. What's good for me?
Renee, how can we give our girls more of the tools they need to succeed in life today?
Well, I believe that's part of sending them to me.
There you go.
But I do believe, like, as parents today, what I kind of see as a weakness is that we want to be their friends. Right? We want them to like us, and we're so much invested in wanting them to like us that sometimes it's hard for us to step in our full empowerment and say, okay, I want you to look at this. I want to challenge that mindset. Or if they're complaining and being in complete victim mode all the time, instead of us trying to fix it and make it better, to just actually, as a mom, as a dad, you know, be in our own sense of self and go, okay, well, I get that. You can choose to continue to think that. But then this is how you're going to continue to feel. So you get to decide.
You know, it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, Renee, because a lot of times as a dad, I'm a problem solver. I want to fix it.
Totally.
And then my wife says, no, you're not supposed to fix it. Just leave it alone. But I want to. I want to help. I know I can help, right?
Right.
And so that's frustrating for me sometimes as a father.
Yeah. But it's also not about stepping back, because sometimes I see parents just step away and they'll be like, oh, well, they're 18, they're 16. I guess they got to just learn it. And I don't buy into that philosophy either. I buy into, okay, I am that person, and I'm going to stand there in that space, and I'm going to hold that space for them. And if they're going to cry and whine or whatever, then I'm just going to still be there, and I'm still going to coach them through it and just be like, okay, well, you get to choose, or how could you get yourself out of that, or how could you think of that differently, or what else could that mean? So as that parent standing in that space and not letting them be the victim, or not letting them manipulate you, right? Or as a parent going, okay, wow, that's bringing up my childhood thing that I wanted to fit in, so maybe I'm compromising and letting my daughter, you know, go do these things because I didn't get to do those things. And so it's a whole complexity. And so I work with parents and teenage girls to kind of just help them create the tapestry of that beautiful relationship and how to dance together. So
how can we help our young people today learn how to develop good habits, not bad habits?
Well, I mean, I think that takes, as a parent, modeling it as well, right? I mean, how much time as a parent do we spend on social media and wasting our time and energy? Or, You know, how much of time as parents do they see us like not getting up or laying our stuff out the night before or using a day timer or being committed to our goals, committed to our dreams, committed to our personal work. So a lot of it is modeling. And then that's where I just love getting our kids and our teenage girls, especially in front of people, like me that can say, hey, these are decisions of destiny. And if you start implementing this, or how are you going to think about this, or carve out that spiritual time for yourself so that you can really be connected on the inside, so that you can be full of purpose, and that you can, you know, when something comes, you can have been like, okay, no, I know how I'm going to handle that, or this is my goal, or this is my focus. So it really all starts internally. And so getting them really connected to those places. And as parents, you know, carving out that space and that energy and those discussions around that. So.
Are you a parent yourself?
I absolutely
am. How many kids?
I have 2 beautiful daughters. So,
okay.
Yes.
So tell me about some of the challenges you faced as a parent with 2 young, beautiful women.
Yeah. Well, they're 25 and 23 now. So.
Okay. Maybe many years ago.
Many years ago.
Maybe 15,
yeah,
you know, 15, 18 years ago.
But really, I think for them, sometimes I've gone back and said to them, you know, how did you do this, or why this? And I mean, it was because I...
What worked and what didn't, right?
Totally, yeah. And it was because I modeled it. I mean, they saw me, and I'm not perfect. And if I wasn't perfect at something, I definitely would admit that and say, okay, well, let's work on this together, or this will be something that will really move us forward. And we kind of get the family on board. And I mean, it was just the 3 of us for 17 years. So yeah, it's just really boils down to what are you going to put into practice as a family on a day-to-day basis, and having those discussions about what it really does mean to be successful. And
did you use some of those experiences as a parent to model some of the programs with Beautiful Inside Academy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me about some of those programs that you offer.
Well, I do group coaching. So I run a group coaching academy for 13 weeks twice a year. And I do private one-on-one coaching with teenage girls all year long. I also do events and have been working with moms and have been coaching some moms as well. So how can we do that? How can we help our relationship with our daughter better? So that's a lot of what I'm offering right now.
What advice would you give to a lot of moms today to really strengthen that relationship with their daughters?
Okay, I love that question. So the question I often put forth to my moms is, who do you need to be so she can be who she needs to be? And so it is like Dr. Christian Northrup kind of talks about it like this. It's kind of like osmosis. So when we're engaged in personal work, when we're modeling healthy relationships, when we're modeling healthy self-talk, when we're modeling healthy body image, so all of those things. So my coaching with the moms is like, where are those areas where you still feel that you need to up level, or those areas that you see in your daughter that she's struggling? Does she mirror that from you as well? And so it's not about shaming or blaming. It's just about this exciting exploration of how can we heal that within us as moms, so that automatically can give our daughters a different launching pad.
How can we help our daughters achieve their full potential in life?
Well, I truly believe it's mindset work. It's not being the victim. It's like really helping them.
Being the victor, right?
Yeah, exactly. Being the victor and unpacking what are those gifts and what is your purpose and what are those decisions of destiny, and how to give them those inner strength and those inner tools when those storms come, and to not be seeking so much external validation, but teaching them how to validate from within, and teaching them how to connect to their spiritual source, and teaching them how to access, you know, all of those giftings on the inside, and then we'll see what strong young women do, right? Like right now I have...
And they could be mentors to other young women, right?
Absolutely.
I've been where you are.
Totally.
Let me show you the way.
Absolutely. And that's kind of my mission. Like I have 19 powerhouse teenage girls in my academy right now, and I just was like, you watch out for them, because these are our future leaders.
That's awesome. Now you have mother-daughter events as well.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about those.
Yeah, I do. So lots of times I'll have the moms, and then I'll have mothers and daughters come together, and it's just about how do we really strengthen this relationship? How do we bond together? Because at the end of the day, like, it is such a sacred, beautiful relationship. And I know for me, being a mom has just been one of the greatest gifts, and one of the things that I just want to shout from the rooftops that I feel like I've been able to do so well. And so bringing them together in that space of honor, and just having the girls understand that this woman right beside you you. I mean, she was your age once too, and they're like, really? It's like, oh, I never thought of it that way, right? But, you know, it's like, access her wisdom, like, let her speak into your life. Or girls, you know, how can you look at this differently, you know, when your mom's telling you, hey, this is what I want for you. And then just teaching the moms how to talk to the girls and just doing a lot of that work so that they can see each other a little bit more clearly.
What can parents learn from their kids?
So much.
Because I mean, as parents,
yeah.
we like to teach our kids lots,
Yeah.
right? So.
Well, I think that our kids are our greatest teachers. And so the wounding or the things that they're dealing with, it's just like, and the way they're reacting, sometimes it does have something to do with us. It has to do with like, okay, well, how have I allowed that behavior? You know, what do I need to heal in me? Or like, for example, like when my daughter turned 18, you know, I was just like a lot more paranoid because that's where some stuff had happened to me. And so, but yet that was a gift because it was like, okay, Mama Bear, time to heal that. And so then I can graciously say to my daughter, wow, I'm realizing this. And sorry if I've been like overprotective, and then that bonded us closer together. And so it's just a beautiful, beautiful mirror if we choose to look at it that way.
Renee Peterson with Beautiful Inside Academy, thanks so much for joining me in studio today.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks so much for watching.